Hi, this is Carrie Hummingbird, and this is Soul Nectar, that show that shares stories of connection to essence so that we can understand that which is bigger than us through the art of storytelling. And I'm so delighted today to have Laura Jack on the show. I met Laura at the Evolutionary Business Council when we met this year and was so inspired by her story, I wanted to share it with you guys. So Laura is a speaker on the topic of compassion, a trainer for the Grief Recovery Institute, and mastery level transformational life coach. Using practices of self-care and self-love, she helps people rediscover their light after loss. Laura's mission is to cultivate a culture of compassion, starting with the self, and to create a better understanding of loss and its accompanying grief. The Compassion Code: how to say the right thing when the wrong thing happens. And this is her book. It's coming out in August. So I'm so excited. Laura, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm just so excited to have you and to share you with everybody here today. And, I like to start, as we talked about earlier, I like to start the calls with your story of your connection to essence. How did you realize that connection? How did you remember yourself in the larger context?
Thank you first just for having me. It's such an honor to be here, and I'm so glad I met you. I'm so excited to meet another Austinite and another person who just you seem to always just speak so much from your heart, and I just want to say thank you for that. So how did I connect with my essence? I feel like I am one of those unique people who never disconnected from my essence. And I know that sounds strange. There have only been a few times in my life where I didn't follow my heart. But I feel like all my life I had the luxury of having a mother who encouraged me to listen to my intuition, which I think is part of source and essence, who encouraged and nurtured that intuitive guide within me, and who just always showed me or seemed to think that I had it all figured out, not like the world, but just myself and what I wanted and loved in life. And so I feel like all my life, I have been connected to my essence, and I've never, people always used to joke that I, marched to the beat of my own drum and all that stuff, but I actually believe that's true. I never really let what other people think or what, affect how I lived my life. I always just tried to be me and be who I am. And so I think being connected to essence or to source, has been something that I have been lucky enough to just always have as just my guiding post.
I love that. I'm so glad those moments I experienced it in my own life. When I was painting, it used to be the way I used to access that place is when I was out in nature and I'd be painting and capturing the landscape and fully present. And then the rest of my time, I would be in my head with little stories, cycling in little thought tunnels and mazes, and completely not present in the past, in the future, and not here. And it's those moments of painting really for me outside, I could get so present. I just felt this sort of deep and wide is the way I explain it. So It's great that you have access to that.
I think when I'm connected with other people, I love people and stories and connection. That's where I feel the most alive, is when I'm connecting with somebody on a deep level. I don't really like superficial conversation much. And so I think that my true essence shines through in what you're talking about, that presence, when I'm in connection, which I'm lucky enough to be in a lot.
Yeah, as a coach.
As a coach, it's my whole life is about learning people's stories and being in connection, deep connection with them. Very rarely do I talk about the weather. I mean, sometimes it's interesting, but it's always just this really deep. And being a grief specialist, I get in deep really quickly with people. And so I think that my essence gets to shine because I get to be in that deep connection pretty consistently.
I love you. I mean, this is exactly where I feel too. I mean, obviously, I've started Soul Nectar Show
Right, exactly.
because I love anything that's really profound or that's going to help me to see life through a new lens, or that's going to open up things for me so that I can feel it on a bigger level or a deeper level. I can feel expanded, or I can feel really just feel something.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I feel the same way as you. A lot of times growing up, people were, I mean, especially, I'm thinking about the dating scene, like after I left my ex-husband and I was dating this one guy, Z, he's in my memoir. And Z would be like, Carrie, like you just got to go so deep. Like, why can't you just have fun? Why can't you just?
That is fun for me. What do you mean?
This is fun.
Right.
I like this. I want to talk about these deep, profound spiritual topics, and I want to get inside you and understand every little nook and cranny. It's fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually believe that that's where a lot of compassion is born, is being curious about people. Because when we're curious about people and where they come from and what they're up to and why they are the way they are, then it's a lot easier to be compassionate. So
talk a little bit about your own journey to finding your purpose and why you came here. Because I know it was a little circuitous journey. I know you started off with, you've always had this curiosity and you started off being curious, but.
Yeah, I've always loved people. The thing is that I think that for many, many years, my love and curiosity with people was kind of surface level, because the deeper stuff scared me. Like things that I now deal with on a daily basis, like people's, traumatic grief experiences or people's just day-to-day grief experiences are the things that I was like always trying to silver line or, make okay or try to fix for people. And so it wasn't actually until I went through my own significant grieving experience, and I already talked about my mom, but my mom died 9 years ago, and she was my lighthouse. She was like the person who guided me on my life's path. And, we definitely didn't have a perfect relationship because I don't think that exists. But I feel like our relationship was so awesome and so meaningful. And she was definitely my best friend and my confidant, and all, from the time I was about 14 was when our relationship as a friendship, besides just being my mother, began, which I feel very fortunate about. But when she died, she was hit and run over by a car. And so her death was so sudden and so tragic and just obviously caught us all by surprise that I just caused a major reevaluation of my life in intellectual terms. In emotional terms, I was so devastated and torn apart. I had no idea what to do with myself, both like the work that I was doing. I used to run a backpacker hostel in Panama for years, and I loved that work so much because it was all about connection with people. And when my mom died, I just did not have anything left to give. I had no energy. I just didn't know who I was anymore without her. And so I found my purpose through her death because I went on my own journey of self-rediscovery because I didn't know who I was. And so I was willing to try anything as long as it was legal and, safe. I was like, I will do anything it takes for my healing process because I know my mom wouldn't want me to die with her. And that's how I felt. I felt like a kind of dead version of my old self. There was not much going on. I just was so distraught. And so I decided that I'd move back to the States, and I decided to go to massage school. And massage school was such an incredible first step in my healing journey. And I knew that I loved massage, but I just didn't know I didn't know if that was like my full purpose. It just felt like something I had to do along the way. But that led me to all sorts of interesting alternative health and wellness practices. I became a health coach. I got really into yoga, started taking tinctures and all this other stuff that I had never even heard of. Being a girl from Texas, I was living up in Seattle, Washington, where things are a little bit more, open, and just discovered acupuncture and just all sorts of interesting modalities that I had never known before. And so my purpose kind of stumbled into me by my own healing journey. And so, just after going through, and I don't know if you want me to I told you this story before, but the story about how I actually decided to work with grief. Would you like me to share that?
Yes, I would like you to share it. Absolutely.
Okay. So I had become a health coach and a massage therapist and all these things. I had become a Pilates instructor, just like anything I could do to like help my body and heal my heart. And I was home visiting my dad with my now husband, who's my boyfriend at the time. And I was asking my dad, who is a very intelligent, logical, left-brained person. I said, Dad, do you think I can make this health coaching thing work? And his response was, well, let's get out the spreadsheet.
Let's run the numbers.
Let's run the numbers. So I laugh now. At the time I was like, but all I wanted, which I didn't know how to ask for because I didn't even know that this is what I wanted, but all I wanted is for him to say, I believe in you. You can do anything you want. But that was my mom, not my dad. And it's not fair to ask something of someone who that's not who he is, right? He's super amazing and stable for me in those ways, but that wasn't his role in my life. And so I go back to my room. I'm staying at my parents' house that I grew up in. And I go back to my childhood room and I'm like, Aaron, it's my husband. If my mom were here, she would know what I should do. And I'm just crying and crying. And so I go to sleep and I cry myself to sleep, basically. And around 4 a.m, I am coming out of this like dreamy state, and I open my eyes and I'm like, where are you? Because I could feel my mom. And again, I've never had this experience before. And I haven't since, and I hope I do again, but I haven't yet. But I could feel my mom so strongly that I was seriously looking for her in the room, like expecting her to be perched up in the corner somewhere. Like I just was like, where are you? And the words that streamed through my head were love, lost, love. Love, lost, love. Love, lost, love. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm like, okay, like what does that mean? I don't know. Like love, lost, love, And so I get my phone out, and I start typing in my phone so I don't forget what I'm learning or hearing or whatever. And as soon as I type that out, more stuff starts flooding in. And I'm like, oh God, okay. And I'm typing. And like, this is getting to be a pain in the butt. So I leave my bedroom. I go into the study and I get out pen and paper and I just start scribbling notes as fast as I can take them. And as fast as all of this stuff is coming into my head. And basically around 8 o'clock in the morning, so 4 hours later, my dad wakes up. Remember, our last interaction was me being kind of upset with him and leaving the room and being like, whoa, And so I go into his office. I'm like, Dad, you would not believe what happened to me. He's like, I just saw you. What are you talking about? I said, I think Mom kind of came to me. And that's not really the belief system I grew up with. So he was like, okay, tell me more. And
something happened to my daughter.
Right. And so I'm like, can I read you all this stuff that I feel like she gave me? And he's like, sure. And so I start reading him Love, Lost, Love. And I basically read him the first talk I ever ended up giving. I wrote out my whole program that I do now, and I drew my logo that's now on my website. And I seriously got this divine download from her. And I said, Dad, I think I'm supposed to help people find the love of life again after loss. And I look up, and again, remember my dad's super left brain. And I look up and my dad's just tears coming down his face. And I was like, okay, I'm on to something here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like
this had an impact.
Right. I'm like, we got this. This is it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mom. You know, it was like, seriously, I felt like, and so from that day forward, and I had just signed up for this like really intensive mastermind experience at the time. So like the next week I was going on this retreat. And so like everything I did from that day forward was changing my business to help people with grief. And then I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I need to learn this. So it was like reading book after book and certification after certification of like, how do I become a grief person? I have no idea, because I sure as heck don't know what I'm doing. But what I realized is that I did know what I was doing. And like all of a sudden, having lost my mom, I had all this experience of being helped by others and then helping others. And then I became a grief recovery specialist with the Grief Recovery Institute, which has been around for 40 years. And I found my purpose. I love what I do. And what's been interesting though is, so I've been doing this for now, 5 years since that happened. And I had 4 years before that where I was just figuring it out for myself, right after my mom died. So 9 years of experience of like really going through this intense, grieving experience and then recovering from that loss. And, but what's been interesting is it wasn't so much that I was helping grievers all the time, although that, has happened, but it was everyone else. So part of why I wrote the compassion code, how to say the right thing when the wrong thing happens, is because the majority of the emails I got were not about people being like, hey, I'm going through this. What do I do? It was, hey, my so-and-so is going through this. What do I do? Hey, my boss is going through a divorce. What do I say? Hey, my sister had a miscarriage. What do I do? Like all these people who are like, I want to be supportive and I have no idea. And I know you know. And so all of a sudden I was like, well, and I always knew the answer. Like, even if I, of course, like you don't always know everything, but like, I just always knew like what I would say. And then people would write back and be like, God, that was so helpful. Like it really went over well or whatever. And so that's where so my purpose is so fascinating, because it's really been this combination of all my life wanting to hear stories and being really curious about people and being really compassionate. And then combined with this like depth of loss that I went through with my mom's death, where I just like really became the woman who I am today and learned how to really accept people where they are in their grief. So
that is so fascinating. So fascinating. I was thinking about, this is so tangential, but I'm just going to go with this, but it made me think about my own loss in my own life. My natural father died when I was in college, and I didn't really know him that well because my mother left him when I was 1.5. She caught him, sort of physically, starting to sexually abuse me at like 1.5. So this was not a person I was really going to spend the rest of my life with. Right. And when I was a little older, I did want to meet him. And when I met him, he was living in New York City and he had AIDS. So he, the whole time I knew him, he was sort of battling with this. And this is right at the beginning of that disease. This is like 1990. So we knew that at some point, it wasn't going to be very long. And I was struggling to open my heart to someone as fast as I could that I knew was going to die. Like hurry up and get to know this person that is going to die. And I couldn't get all the way there. And I swear I beat myself up for years about it. But I also never really felt like he was gone. And at one point, like a year after he died, I looked behind me in the crowd in my college town, and I could have sworn I saw him. Like out of the corner of my eye, I saw him, and he like winked at me with his little hat on and everything. And I was like, that is crazy. And then I looked again and he wasn't there. And I always felt like I changed, like something about me shifted when he died. And everybody in my family noticed it. I was like, you're not the same. Like something happened to you. And then I ended up marrying my ex-husband, and my parents were like, why are you marrying this person? Like it was really interesting. And it wasn't until I got to the Four Winds and we were doing this work with, entities, we're doing this work with beings that died, so to speak, or your ancestors. And, we were working with, does anybody in your family have died that you were close to? And in my group working on me, they actually extracted from me an entity. And as they were working with me, I realized it was my natural father. He hadn't gone anywhere except in me. It's such a crazy thing to even, for most people to even conceptualize. And when they took him out of me, I felt him go. I knew I knew what it was. And I just felt so empty inside. For the first time, I actually felt like I could really grieve. I could let it go, that it was over, that he was gone from my life. And a lot of things have been resolved since then, and I wonder sometimes, like, the choices that I make or, the things that I've been doing, would I even have done any of those things if it wasn't for him sort of being with me, the whole time. So I think it's really interesting when people experience death to just from that perspective. Now, when I look at that, in my mind, I go, I always wonder, what's actually happening energetically with this person? Have they let go of this person in their life or not? And I think grief is a really good sign that, that person is left. But there's a lot of times that people don't feel anything. They don't feel the loss. They feel sort of numb, disassociated. And in those moments, I often think about my experience and I wonder what's really going on, under the surface. Yeah. And it's the unknowable.
Yeah, it is unknown. However, the thought that comes to me is, just in relation to the idea of like people who feel numb versus people who feel grief, is that it's hard to separate because we're taught all our lives not to feel. And so part of that numbness often is a societal kind of doing. Because I know for the first 9 months after my mom died, I just put on a happy face and I was fine. I wasn't fine, clearly. But I was fine. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to da-da-da. Like, I called my dad every day to make sure he was fine. Like, it was all about me taking care of everybody else and being strong for everyone. And I don't necessarily think that my mom was with me. I think that for me, I was numbing to the fact that she was gone because I was so afraid to feel. I was so scared of feeling her absence because I thought I would literally explode.
Well, and I think that sometimes we hold on to people that way, if you know what I'm saying. Like,
oh, for sure.
I think in some ways, like for me, it was really unresolved.
Oh, yeah.
And when I was going through my program at the Four Winds, the sort of thinking was that they have attachments to you. And so, or you have attachments to them. And at the time I thought, well, he was just attached to me, like, I think I was the one attached to him. Like, I couldn't let him go because I wasn't able to love him. And I couldn't let him go.
There's a definition that we use in grief recovery. It says, grief is reaching out for someone who's always been there or who's never been there, only to discover when you need or want them one more time, they're not there or they're still not there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times with estranged relationships like you had with your dad, or, he hadn't been there most of your life. So it's like reaching out for this person that you always wished had been there. And now all of a sudden he's here. He's in your life. He was involved in your life. And then you want him and he dies and then he's not there. And he's still not there. And I was
so conflicted because I wanted him there, but then I didn't. Like, some part of me was really like not wanting it. It's it's like this.
Totally. And grief, sorry, I can't help myself, but grief, the definition of grief is the conflicting feelings that come at the end of a change in a familiar pattern of behavior. The conflicting feelings, it's not the sad, bad, hard, terrible, awful feelings. It's the conflicting feelings that come when things change.
And it's unresolved. And, I think that as humans, we want to resolve it before we let it go.
Absolutely.
And one of the most powerful things I've learned on my journey is you can't solve it. It's the unsolvable. It's like trying to figure out my 20-year marriage, for example. And in the West, I'm in this Power Path program training right now. And in the West direction, you let go of everything. You just give it to the spirit of death and you say, here, I'm giving it. I'm surrendering it to you. And here we are at the edge of the canyon. And after 6 years of trying to figure it out, I just took some tobacco and I just blew in the tobacco. Okay, I'm giving it to the earth. I'm giving it to the spirit of death because I can't figure it out. If I would have figured out the whys and the hows, I would have done it by now. And I think the same is true of my natural father. It's like, I just didn't know that then, but it's one of those things you can't, I think we're trying to hold on to it because we haven't figured it out yet, or we don't understand it and we have to keep tunneling through it. But the solution is to surrender it, to give it up.
So I agree. And I also have something else to add.
Oh, please do. This is your area.
Which is, yes, we do have to surrender sometimes. And that's easier said than done. Just like the word forgiveness is easier said than done. Like, I need to forgive them. Well, yeah, but like, how the heck do I do that? People always say you need to move on, but they don't tell you how. And honestly, the only tool I've ever found that really helped to sort through and recover from grief, grief recovery. So like the work that I do with grief recovery actually helps you sort through and figure out all the emotional baggage that you've been holding on to. It is like the most amazing tool I've ever found for grief relief and grief recovery. And I was like you, where I was like, it is just there. It's always going to just be there. And like, I don't believe that anymore. It's not like, I don't feel like I have sad moments about my mom now, but the geyser of sadness that I used to feel, where
the geyser of sadness,
it's not now. Now it's like a splash pad where like, every once in a while there's like a little spurt of water and, like people in Texas know what a splash pad is, but people other places where it's like, where it's just a ground and then you have like spurts of water that like surprise you where you're like, ah, right? Like, that's what it is for me now. Like every once in a while I'll have like a sad moment where something comes up that I haven't discovered before. But like grief recovery is a tool that I've been able to use and now help so many other people use that actually helps you resolve your grief. It's amazing. Like, who knew that this was possible? Anyway, it's incredible. And so, yes, like you do have to surrender and you have to take action. Like all the things that you've done, like all these programs you've been through, for me, all the work I've done, it's all action oriented. It's not about letting time heal us or any of that crap. It's about us actually taking action, empowered action in our own lives to help us heal.
As you're just saying that, I'm thinking to myself, I think that's why the shamanic training I've gotten really appeals to me, because it's making it tangible. It's like saying, oh, this person's in you. Let's take him out. It's
exactly.
But it's just a cognitive structure. It's just like saying, okay, I'm going to take this bit of energy out of me.
Right.
And somehow my being can process that easier than trying to think about it. Like it's easier for me to go, oh, he's in me. And then everybody can spot it. They're all spotting it and seeing it because it's there, or we're making it there in the quantum field. Who knows? But it's such a visceral thing. And then you can feel it coming out. You can feel it, and everybody feels the same thing. It's really trippy when you experience that.
I can't even imagine.
I didn't even know that was possible until that happened.
So you're working a lot more in like spirit world, and like the work that I do is much more in the heart.
Yeah, so I'm working with the energy.
Right. You're working with energy, and like our goal in grief recovery is to take people from here
to the heart. And I'm like, now let's go to the energy.
Right, which is great. Like, I think there's no wrong way. I just think that as long as you know there is a way, like that's all that matters. Is that like I kind of think of myself as like a liaison between the worlds, right? In the sense that like I come from this very traditional like Western medicine family. Like my dad's brothers are doctors, my stepmom's a doctor. Like I come from like a very traditional, family. And then like I live, in this woo-woo world with all my woo-woo friends.
And you and I
like,
get along just fine. But your
totally.
family would go, who is this Carrie Hummingbird walked in the door? What is she talking about?
Well, like, and so like the beauty for me is that I get to like kind of hold both worlds.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can talk to you and I can talk to my dad and I can communicate between the two. And so like the grief work that I get to do is so cool because I can help people who are like my dad, but I can also help people who are like you, who just are coming from these two different worlds because they both speak. We all have a heart.
Yeah, the heart. So talk a little bit about the heart. Talk about what you've learned.
Oh man,
a little amazing. Bit. I know. Hard to talk about it in just a couple minutes, but
yeah. God, it's just so there are these like cliche expressions where people talk about what grief is like your heart breaking open. I think for me, my heartbreak showed me the depth of who I actually am. Like me losing my mom was by far the most heartbreaking experience of my life. And I hope it's the most heartbreaking thing I ever have to go through. But it broke me open. And the grief I experienced, even though it wasn't all right away because I numbed out for the first 9 months and pretended I was fine. But the grief that I experienced helped me understand the depth of my love for her. And I think part of why people are so afraid to let go of their pain is because they think that the pain's all I have left of that person. But for those people out there who are listening, who are like, yeah, that's me, just know, and I have a client who said it perfectly, so I'm just going to quote him. He said, now that I am thriving in my life, so he worked with me on a program. I have a program called Surviving to Thriving. And now that I feel like I'm thriving my life, I feel so much closer to Maureen, which was his wife who died, than I ever did when I was just getting by. And so for those of you out there who are keeping your pain and holding on to your loss and your grief because you're so afraid that if you let go of it and you heal and you feel better, that you're not going to be connected with them anymore, just know that you can actually be more connected to the people you love and lost and who you miss, whether it's a death or a divorce or any other loss. It doesn't matter which kind. Because you living your life fully actually connects you more with your essence, more with source, more with whatever your belief is, and more with those people who you've lost than you are when you are in your deep grief. Because like I said before, I didn't want to die with my mom. I didn't want my soul to die with her, and she would have been devastated at the thought of that. And so, yeah, I just think that just remember, and I hope that this, resonates with some of you out there who are listening, that you can be close to the people who aren't in your life anymore by being your best self. You don't have to lose yourself with them. Okay? So that's what I have to say about that.
And, I think it's really encouraging. Of course, I've got a lot of clairvoyance skills now. So for me, I'm just of this awareness that it's all this big conscious soup and you can access anybody at any time. So whether they're alive in a body or they're always alive. So whether they're alive in a body or they're in the spirit world, like you can always, it's clear, it's psychic. So you can always talk to them. They're there, but I think a lot of people don't have access to that. And I think that your experience shows that it's totally possible to feel the presence of your loved one and to just trust that experience. I think that's the difference between me and a lot of people, is that I feel those things and I perceive them, and I started trusting and believing and knowing that they were real.
Mm.
That's the key to intuition,
mm-hmm.
is to trust what you're experiencing.
Yeah. And trust yourself, trusting in yourself. Because I think sometimes it can be really hard because we haven't been taught that. But I haven't
been taught that.
No, most of the time people, cut off our intuition early on. Like, no, you don't like Uncle George? No, you should like Uncle George. It's like, well, maybe I don't. There's a reason I might not like Uncle George, right? Like kids know stuff, they are pretty great, amazing intuits. And so it's just making sure we nurture that in ourselves and in each other.
And I had one more story to share with your readers. All these listeners are probably like, oh gosh, she's got another story. But this one's cool. So actually, my grandfather died when I was 16. And he lived in Texas. He worked the oil fields. He used to work the oil drums. And we lived in New England. And so we would visit like once a year or something like that. And in between our visits, my grandfather passed away. He had been, he was in the bathroom when he passed away. And a lot of times he'd had a, triple heart bypass, and the heart can be a problem. So anyway, he passed away in a toilet. So that's how things are. But when we went to go for his funeral, I went into that bathroom, and I just was so sad because I loved my grandfather. And I'm standing in the mirror, and I'm just looking at the mirror, and I'm just being in the bathroom where he died. And I was just feeling, and I was just like, I just miss you, Grandpa. I really love you. I'm really sad that we didn't get to say goodbye. Just kind of having a conversation with him. And all of a sudden I felt these chills, like almost like a blanket of sparkles or tingles all over my body, like this warm, tingly blanket all around my body, wrapped me up. And at the same time, I smelled that smell that you get at the funeral parlor. It's like this sicky sweet smell, like that wafted in. And I realized that he was right there with me. That he hadn't gone anywhere. And I think that's, for me, why I always realized they don't go anywhere. They're just not where you can see them and touch them. But they're still out there. They're still there. And they're accessible to you at any time.
Yeah, I talk to my mom all the time, even now. Like, I'll put my headphones on so I don't look like a crazy person. And I'll just like go for a walk and talk to her.
I love that you do that.
Yeah, she's with me. I mean, I can't see her, but like I love her and I miss her, and I want to tell her stuff. So I do. And, some people are like, they already know that you're there or whatever. But I like to just talk to her, and I'll write her notes and like letters, just because it's like a way for me to communicate what's going on in my life with her, like in a way that makes me still feel good. So it's for me, and that's really most important when you're the one grieving, or when you're the one who's had the loss experience. It's important that you just take care of yourself, because the other person's gone. So like part of why those comments like they're in a better place and all that stuff aren't helpful is because that's about them, not about you, the person who's left behind.
Yes. It's your ritual. It's your conversation. It's your knowing.
Right.
It's a 16-year-old girl connecting with her grandfather.
Exactly.
And it's my experience, and I own it. And that makes me feel comforted that
for sure.
I had that experience. So I want to encourage the listeners to, really allow yourself to have your own knowing, and nobody else has to experience it for you to know that it's true. Nobody else has to validate your experience. You're the one who knows what you're feeling in your heart and what you're hearing in your mind. And you're the one who knows. And trust that intuition.
Yeah, for sure.
So tell us about your book launch.
Well, it'll be in August. My book's coming out, and I'm so excited it's really a scary thing. It's very vulnerable to have a book come out, as you probably know.
Yes.
It's because it's the first time. I blog all the time. So like I write all the time. I love writing. But like a book, like something in print feels very like final.
It's
I'm like,
official.
I'm like, I have so much more to say than this. Like, hopefully this is just the first book. But I'm so excited to get it out there because I call the people who help others the front lines of humanity. So like, anyone from a hairstylist to a massage therapist to a physician to a bartender to a coach to the checker at the grocery store, anybody who takes the time to ask you how you're doing and actually listen to the answer. That's who I wrote this book for. Because basically I just wanted to give people some extra skills around how to say the right thing when the wrong thing happens, because life is messy and complicated. And part of what's so complicated is that nobody knows how to support us, because we sure as heck don't even know what we're doing ourselves half the time. And so I wrote this book for people who are already supporting others, whether it's friends or family members or their clients or patients, as a means to feel more equipped when somebody comes to you and says, my dog died. And I love that dog. And I feel like an idiot about it, but I miss him so much. Or my kid is dating this terrible guy and I'm so mad and I feel like we're estranged right now and I don't know what to do about it. Like, how do we support those people in our lives when they're going through their troubles? And then how to be compassionate to ourselves. And so I'm super excited because I really just want to normalize grief and understand the role grief plays in the compassion arena and how we can be compassionate toward other people when they're going through their stuff. So that's what my book is. And I'm super excited. I'm super scared, but I know it's going to be great. I've had about probably 15 people read it now just for like editing and all that kind of stuff. And I've gotten such great feedback. And so obviously that helps a little bit of validation, but kind of like you said before, where you have to self-validate. I just have to self-validate that like the people who read it are going to get exactly what they need. And I'm excited to be able to support some people who are already doing such great work in the world of compassion and love and kindness to feel like they're more equipped to say the right thing when other people are going through really hard times.
Awesome. And I wanted you to tell people about your Army of Compassion.
Sure. So I have a Facebook group online called the Army of Compassion. So if you would like to be part of it, just type in the Army of Compassion into Facebook and it should come up, and I'll just ask to be invited and I'll accept you, or Carrie will accept you because she's in there too. And, but it's just basically a place where people can come together and begin building bridges. The idea is just to bring people together, because where there's understanding and where there's love, there's hope and there's peace. And so the idea is just that we all come from so many different walks of life. And it's important. I know it sounds funny to have an army of compassion, but the idea is that we need to rise up together and connect and communicate and understand each other. So often, I love it when they have in the movies, like people get stuck in an elevator or get stuck together when they like hated each other previously and like they come away best of friends. Like that's real. Like it's very hard to hate somebody when you actually find out their depth of their story. It's hard to like really not connect with them because, oh, you're just a person just like me. It's like that common humanity that binds us together. And so the Army of Compassion is a place for people to come together and start building bridges of love and connection in spite of all the things that are going on in the world and all the challenges we're facing both nationally and internationally. So that's really cool. And then I wanted to tell them about a free thing that they can get from my website. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Please share.
So they can go to my website, which is just laurajack.com. And there's a place that's called resources at the top where they can just get all sorts of free stuff. I have lots of ebooks and blogs and videos and all sorts of stuff there. But also just if you're on the call and you want to, you can go to laurajack.com/compassion code. And that is where you can get my free little starter kit. It's called the Compassion Code Starter Kit, How to Say the Right Thing When the Wrong Thing Happens. And it's just a preview book. It's like a 10-page preview of my book that's coming out. So it just gives you some really tangible tools to get started. So if you're like, I like those tools, go for it. Go to laurajack.com/compassion code, download the little starter kit. And then it'll also give you an update when the real book comes out. So if you're interested in, getting the book when it comes out, you'll be, the first to know or whatever.
Yay. Awesome. Well, thanks, Laura, for coming on the show today. I had such a great
you.
conversation with you, and
Thank
love
you.
the work you're doing in the world. Think it's really fabulous, and looking forward to your book coming out.
Thank you.
And
thanks for sharing some of your stories with me too.
Absolutely. I'm sure, I know my stories are interesting, but they are real. They happened. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. It's part of being Carrie Hummingbird.
Heck
that story. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on Soul Nectar. And so I always end the calls with kisses. So here they come. Bye, everybody.